The sharp crack of a slap echoed through the marble-floored lobby of Monarch Financial. "I've already called the police," Preston Reed shouted, his voice bouncing off the high ceilings. "We don't serve your kind here." He made sure everyone in the bank could hear him asserting his authority. Customers froze mid-transaction, their heads turning toward the commotion. Zora Timberlake stood perfectly still, her cheek reddening from the impact, her eyes never leaving the face of the man who had just struck her. Preston Reed, customer service manager. His name tag gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Two security guards rushed over, not to restrain Preston, but to surround Zora. "You're under arrest, ma'am," one of them said. Phones came out as bystanders began recording. Another viral moment of discrimination in America was unfolding before them. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious, but most simply watched in silence, unwilling to involve themselves. Instead of responding with anger or fleeing in humiliation, Zora straightened her posture. She adjusted the simple cardigan she wore over a plain blouse and spoke in a voice that carried the quiet confidence of someone unaccustomed to being questioned. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding," she said, each word measured and calm, despite the red handprint forming on her dark skin. At 45, Zora Timberlake was the definition of self-made success. The daughter of a hospital janitor and a public school teacher, she had worked her way through college with 3 jobs, earned her MBA while raising her son alone after her husband's death, and built Timberlake Financial from a one-room consulting firm into a banking empire with assets exceeding $9 billion. Her face had graced the covers of Forbes and Black Enterprise. Her name was etched onto donor walls at hospitals, universities, and community centers across the country. Her signature authorized transactions that changed lives. But none of that was visible as she stood in Monarch Financial that day. The designer suits and statement jewelry that defined her public persona had been replaced by off-the-rack clothes. Her normally immaculate braids were covered with a simple headscarf. The elegant glasses that had become part of her brand were exchanged for contact lenses. She looked like any middle-class black woman trying to conduct business at a bank, which was precisely the point. What Preston Reed didn't know was that 3 weeks earlier, Zora had acquired Monarch Financial in a quiet deal that had yet to be announced. Only the board and the highest executives knew that ownership had changed hands. The announcement was scheduled for the following month after Zora had completed her undercover assessment of the bank's practices. For this wasn't just any bank to Zora. This specific branch held a painful significance in her family's history. 30 years earlier, her grandmother, Eloise Jenkins, had walked through these same doors seeking a modest home loan. Despite perfect credit and an income that more than qualified her, she was denied with vague excuses about different requirements for certain neighborhoods. That rejection had altered the trajectory of her grandmother's life, forcing her to remain in rental housing, draining resources that could have built generational wealth. "Some things don't show up in audits and financial statements," Zora had explained to her executive team when outlining her plan. "Discrimination doesn't appear on balance sheets. Bias doesn't show up in quarterly reports. The only way to truly understand what customers experience is to become one." Her team had objected, of course. It was unorthodox. It was risky. What if she was recognized? But Zora had been adamant. "You can't fix what you don't understand from the ground up," she had insisted, with the same quiet determination that had built her empire. "I need to see it with my own eyes, feel it with my own heart. That's the only way to create meaningful change." Away from the conference room, Zora's life was defined by her relationship with her 16-year-old son, Jamil. He was everything she worked for, the future she was trying to build for all families who had been systematically denied opportunity. The night before her 3rd visit to Monarch Financial, the one that would end with a slap, Jamil had questioned her methods over dinner. "I don't get it, Mom," he said, pushing his plate aside. "You literally own the bank now. Why not just fire everyone and start over? Why put yourself through this experiment?" Zora considered his question carefully. Because firing people without understanding the problem doesn't solve anything. Those same people get hired somewhere else and continue the same behaviors. The system doesn't change. "So you're going to let them disrespect you?" Jamil's voice carried the indignation of youth. "You? After everything you've built?" "Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be underestimated," Zora replied, her voice soft but unwavering. "Your great-grandmother taught me that. She couldn't fight the system that denied her a loan from the outside, but I can change it from the inside." What Jamil couldn't fully appreciate was the double consciousness Zora had navigated her entire life, being both a powerful banking executive and a black woman in America. Monarch Financial represented more than just another acquisition. It symbolized a reckoning. Founded in 1952, the bank had expanded by financing white prosperity while systematically denying loans to qualified black applicants. This was the legacy she aimed to dismantle. This was why she stood in a simple cardigan in the lobby of a bank she owned, asking for services that were hers to command. Her first visit had been on a Tuesday morning. The branch occupied a stately brick building, its marble columns and brass fixtures projecting an image of stability and tradition. Zora had prepared meticulously. Her outfit, navy slacks, sensible shoes, a cardigan, was chosen to present as a working professional of modest means. She carried a well-worn purse containing a carefully crafted identity for Zora Jenkins, using her grandmother's maiden name. The documentation showed a solid middle-class income, excellent credit, and enough savings to qualify for any basic banking service. Entering the bank, she joined the queue. The lobby featured rich mahogany counters and tasteful artwork, an atmosphere of understated luxury. Zora stood patiently, observing. A white businessman was immediately escorted to a private desk. An elderly white couple was guided through retirement options with solicitous attention. When it was her turn, she approached the available teller, a young man named Aiden. When he saw Zora, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. She stated her purpose clearly. She was new to the area and looking to open checking and savings accounts. Aiden's response was the first subtle sign of differential treatment. Instead of offering to connect her with a personal banker, as he had for others, he simply provided a brochure. "You can find all our account information online," he explained, his voice lowered slightly. "Or the ATM can help you open a basic account without waiting." It was discrimination wrapped in the language of convenience. Zora noted his discomfort, the way his eyes darted toward the customer service desk where Preston Reed sat watching. "I'd prefer to speak with someone about my options," she replied pleasantly but firmly. "I have questions about your investment services as well." Aiden's discomfort grew. "I'll see if anyone is available," he said, picking up his phone and avoiding her gaze. The brief, coded conversation that followed was illuminating. "I have a walk-in." "Yes, she's requesting a banker." "Okay, I'll let her know." He hung up and offered an apologetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. "All our personal bankers are currently with clients. It might be a significant wait." Just then, the front doors opened to admit a white woman in her 30s, dressed in business attire not dissimilar from Zora's. Without hesitation, Preston Reed rose from his desk. "Good morning, welcome to Monarch Financial," he boomed, his voice warm and solicitous. "I'd be happy to help you personally. We take pride in providing the human touch here at Monarch." The contrast was stark. Two women with similar appearance and stated needs, one directed to an ATM, the other offered immediate personal assistance. The only difference was the color of their skin. "I understand there might be a wait," Zora told Aiden calmly. "I'm happy to schedule an appointment." Before Aiden could respond, Preston approached, his assessment of Zora immediate and dismissive. "I understand you're interested in our services," he began, his voice professionally cordial, while his eyes communicated something else entirely. "For new clients, we typically recommend starting with our online portal. Our staff is quite busy." The implication was clear. Zora did not fit his profile of a valuable customer. "I prefer in-person banking," Zora replied, standing her ground. Preston's smile tightened. "Without an existing relationship with us, new accounts have certain requirements. Perhaps I could see some additional identification?" It was a classic technique. Zora produced her driver's license, social security card, and a recent utility bill. Preston examined them with exaggerated thoroughness, holding her license up to the light as if suspecting forgery. "I see you're self-employed," he noted, his tone suggesting this was suspicious. "We'll need to see tax returns and business registration documents before proceeding." These were requirements not mentioned to the white customer, barriers selectively deployed to discourage people like Zora. "Is that a new policy?" Zora asked, her tone questioning but not confrontational. Preston's expression hardened. It's our policy for accounts we deem potentially high risk. If you'd prefer a more basic banking experience, there's a community credit union about 6 blocks east that might better suit your needs. Zora thanked him for his time and left, having witnessed exactly what she came to observe. The next day she returned. On Wednesday morning, Zora entered Monarch Financial again, this time armed with every possible piece of identification and financial verification, far exceeding what was necessary. Her approach was calculated to eliminate any legitimate reason for denial. Instead of joining the teller line, she approached the information desk. "I'd like to open a checking and savings account and discuss your wealth management options," she stated clearly. "I have an appointment." It was a small strategic deception. The receptionist checked her computer, looking confused. "That's strange," Zora said smoothly, exploiting the opening. "I spoke with someone yesterday who assured me I could come in. I've brought all the requested documentation." She opened her portfolio, revealing meticulously organized paperwork. "Since I'm here, is there someone available to assist me?" As the receptionist picked up her phone, Zora became aware of Bryson Walsh, the branch manager, observing from his office doorway. Walsh represented another type of institutional leader, one who maintained plausible deniability while enabling discriminatory practices. He approached with a practiced smile. "Good morning. I understand there may be some confusion." Before Zora could respond, Preston inserted himself into the conversation. "Mr. Walsh, this is the individual I mentioned from yesterday." The careful emphasis on individual spoke volumes. Walsh's expression shifted, the subtle realignment of someone receiving a coded message. "I see," he said, his tone cooling. "Well, as Mr. Reed likely explained, we have certain protocols." Zora presented her comprehensive portfolio: driver's license, passport, social security card, birth certificate, utility bills, bank statements, tax returns, and business registration. It was deliberately excessive. Walsh and Preston exchanged a glance, searching for any reason to continue denying service. Finding none, Walsh reluctantly gestured toward an empty desk. "Vivian can assist you." Vivian Mercer, a loan officer in her 60s, approached with professional detachment. As they sat, she began the account opening process with mechanistic efficiency, her questions cold and impersonal. When Zora inquired about wealth management, Vivian was dismissive. "Those services typically require a minimum investment of $250,000. We generally recommend our basic savings options for customers beginning their financial journey." The assumption was another form of discrimination, presuming lower financial capability based on race. "I understand the minimum," Zora replied calmly. "My investment portfolio currently exceeds $500,000. I'm interested in diversification strategies." Vivian registered brief surprise before masking it. "We would need to verify those assets, of course. The documentation is quite extensive." "Of course," Zora agreed, "though I notice the couple at the next desk seems to be discussing investment options without having provided such verification. Is there a different procedure for them?" The couple in question, both white, were indeed engaged in a friendly consultation that had begun with conversation, not demands for documentation. Vivian's fleeting discomfort at being challenged was instantly buried beneath a practiced shield of deflection. "Each client's situation is unique," she replied, her voice draped in bureaucratic vagueness. "Now, for your checking account, we'll need to establish certain parameters." The conversation devolved into a bureaucratic gauntlet. Vivian requested more forms of identification than policy required, suggested unnecessary account restrictions, and repeatedly hammered on minimum balance requirements. Throughout this ordeal, Preston Reed circled their desk, feigning assistance to other staff, but his eyes never strayed far, his irritation a palpable presence in the air. When Zora politely inquired why she needed additional employment verification when her tax returns already confirmed her income, Preston inserted himself. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, the question aimed at Vivian, though his gaze was fixed on Zora, a clear challenge in his eyes. "Ms. Jenkins has some questions about our verification process," Vivian said, subtly distancing herself from the escalating tension. Preston's response was immediate, a well-rehearsed line. "Our requirements ensure we provide appropriate services to qualified clients. If our standard procedures are too much for you, perhaps another institution would be more suitable." It was the second time she had been encouraged to take her business elsewhere. This wasn't customer service. It was a clear architecture of discouragement. Around them, the atmosphere had soured. Other customers had begun to notice, some watching openly while others feigned deep absorption in their phones. I'm simply trying to understand which requirements are standard and which are being selectively applied, Zora replied, her voice pitched to carry, deliberately calm but unwavering. A flush crept up Preston's neck. Before he could retort, a white customer approached him with a quick question. Instantly, Preston's entire demeanor shifted. The hostility vanished, replaced by a warm, helpful mask as he turned away from Zora, a broad smile fixed on his face. The transformation was jarring, another documented example of the two faces of the bank, one for her and one for everyone else. When Preston turned back to Zora, his expression had hardened into barely disguised contempt. We'll need time to process your application. We will contact you within 7 to 10 business days. It was a classic delay tactic. All around them, white customers were opening accounts on the spot. As Zora gathered her documents, she made one final, pointed observation. I noticed the gentleman who arrived after me has already opened his account and received his temporary checks. Is there a reason my process takes 10 days while his was immediate? Preston's jaw tightened. As I've explained, each situation is unique. We've done all we can for you today. He turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Vivian to awkwardly conclude the interaction. As Zora left, she felt the eyes of other customers on her, their expressions a mixture of embarrassment and anger. Outside, she meticulously documented every detail of the visit, the specific differences in treatment, the tactics used to discourage her, the employees involved. The pattern was undeniable. But she wasn't just a researcher observing these practices. She was experiencing them as the owner of the very institution perpetrating them. The third visit, scheduled for the next morning, would be the breaking point. Thursday dawned with the sharp, crystalline light of early autumn, the sun gleaming off the windows of Monarch Financial. Zora approached for her final undercover visit, dressed with a subtle formality that projected confidence and purpose. Her documents were organized in a leather portfolio, her manner composed as she entered the now familiar lobby. The atmosphere shifted. Employees who recognized her from the previous days reacted with a silent, coordinated retreat. Aidan Fox glanced up from his teller window, then quickly looked down. Vivian Mercer became suddenly fascinated by the paperwork on her desk. Preston Reed, conversing with a colleague, stiffened the moment he saw her. Zora approached the information desk. Good morning. I'd like to speak with someone about business loan options. The receptionist, though new to Zora, was clearly aware of her. Do you have an existing business account with us? She asked with practiced neutrality. Not yet, Zora replied. I'm evaluating banking relationships for both my personal and business needs. The receptionist glanced toward Preston, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly. The waiting area afforded Zora a perfect vantage point. She watched Preston and another manager, Bryson Walsh, engaged in a hushed, conspiratorial conversation, their eyes darting in her direction. After 23 minutes, during which 3 white customers were assisted immediately, Vivian approached, holding a thin folder. We have some standard materials about our business services, she said, handing the folder over without sitting down. A clear signal this was to be a brief dismissal, not a consultation. The folder contained nothing but glossy marketing pamphlets. I was hoping to discuss options tailored to my situation, Zora said. I have my business plans with me. Vivian's discomfort was obvious. She glanced toward Preston, who was watching them like a hawk. Our business lending specialists are all with clients at the moment. Perhaps you could leave your materials for review. Before Zora could respond, the front doors opened. A white man in business casual attire walked in. Preston immediately strode toward him, his voice booming with enthusiasm. Mr. Davidson, great to see you. Bryson is ready for you in his office right now to discuss that expansion loan. The contrast was a chasm, impossible to ignore. I notice your business lending specialists do seem available for some clients, Zora observed, her voice calm, yet it cut through the low hum of the bank. I'm happy to wait. Vivian's professional mask cracked. I'll check on that for you, she stammered, retreating toward the manager's office. During the exchange, Zora caught fragments of conversation from behind the customer service desk, where Preston had rejoined his colleagues. Their voices were low, venomous whispers. Third day in a row. Getting tired of this. People like that always wanting special treatment. Zora had heard enough. She stood and walked directly to the desk. The employees' whispered conversation died on their lips. Their expressions shifted from surprise to alarm, the instinctive reaction of people caught in the act. "Excuse me," Zora said, her voice measured but firm. "I couldn't help but overhear your comments. I'd like to understand which policies at Monarch Financial support treating customers differently based on race." The lobby fell silent. Every head turned. Preston's face flushed a dark, mottled crimson, not with embarrassment, but with pure rage at being confronted. "I don't know what you think you heard," he spat, "but you're mistaken. Now, if you're not here for legitimate banking business—" "I have been here for 3 days attempting to conduct legitimate business," Zora interrupted, her composure a stark contrast to his fury. "Each time I have been treated differently. I've been asked for excessive documentation, made to wait while others were helped immediately, and now I have overheard staff discussing me with racial animus. I would like to speak with the branch manager." Preston's expression curdled into a threat. "You're creating a disturbance. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." He stepped out from behind the desk, moving into her personal space in a blatant act of intimidation. "I am simply requesting appropriate service," Zora replied, holding her ground. "You need to leave. Now, before I call security." "Please do," she said calmly. "Perhaps they can explain why Monarch Financial has one standard of service for white customers and another for black customers." Preston's rage boiled over. "You don't belong here," he shouted and lashed out. He raised his hand, and the sharp, obscene crack of his palm against her cheek echoed off the marble floor. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones were raised higher to capture the assault. Behind the teller window, Aiden Fox fumbled for his own phone, his hands shaking. "I've already called the police," Preston announced, his voice triumphant. "They're coming to arrest you." Through it all, Zora Timberlake stood perfectly still, one hand rising slowly to her reddening cheek, her eyes never leaving Preston's face. The wail of sirens pierced the tense silence. Flashing red and blue lights painted strobing patterns against the marble columns as 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt outside. 3 officers emerged, their hands resting near their weapons as they scanned the entrance. Inside, Preston straightened his tie with a sharp tug, the arrival of law enforcement validating his authority. "They're here," he announced with satisfaction. "Security, detain this woman." The lead officer, a heavy-set white man, entered with his eyes locked on Zora, instantly identifying her as the threat. Preston stepped forward, positioning himself as the victim. "Officer, thank you for responding. This woman has been causing a disturbance. She became physically threatening when asked to leave." It was a breathtaking fabrication, delivered with the absolute confidence of a man who believed his word was law. The lead officer nodded, accepting Preston's account without question. He turned to Zora, his hand moving closer to his weapon. "Ma'am, I need you to put your hands where I can see them." Zora maintained her unshakable composure. She raised her hand slightly, a gesture of compliance, not submission. "Officers," she said, her voice clear and carrying through the silent lobby, "I was physically assaulted by this employee after questioning the bank's discriminatory practices. The entire incident is on camera, and several customers have also recorded it." From the crowd, a middle-aged white woman stepped forward. "That's not what happened," she said firmly. "He slapped her. We all saw it. I have it on video." A chorus of other voices joined in, a wave of witness accounts crashing against Preston's lie. The lead officer hesitated. "Sir, multiple witnesses are contradicting your account. We'll need to review the security footage." Preston's composure began to crack. "We can't just access that on demand. There are protocols." "Actually," Bryson Walsh interjected, suddenly appearing from his office with the seamless self-preservation of a man sensing a shift in the tide, "I can authorize immediate access for law enforcement. We are happy to cooperate fully." Preston stared at his manager, his face a mask of betrayal. The lead officer, his certainty now rattled, gestured to Zora. "Ma'am, I still need you to move to a separate area." "I understand, officer," Zora replied. "Before I do, I need to make one brief phone call. I believe it will clarify this situation." Something in her demeanor, the absolute confidence of someone unaccustomed to being refused, gave him pause. "Make it quick," he conceded. "On speaker." Zora dialed a number from memory. After 2 rings, a crisp, professional female voice answered, audible to everyone. Miss Timberlake? The use of Timberlake sent the first ripple of confusion through the bank staff. Preston's brow furrowed. Zora ended the call. Who exactly are you? Preston demanded, his bravado crumbling into uncertainty. Zora met his gaze. That will become clear very shortly, Mr. Reed. The use of his name, which she had never been given, was another small shock that chipped away at his reality. Just then, the glass doors swung open again. An executive phalanx entered, 3 impeccably dressed professionals moving with synchronized purpose. In the lead was a woman in an Armani suit whose commanding presence drew every eye. Behind her followed a silver-haired man carrying the leather briefcase of senior legal counsel. They approached Zora directly, ignoring everyone else. Miss Timberlake, the lead woman said, we've secured the documentation. She handed Zora a sleek portfolio embossed with a distinctive logo. Timberlake Financial Group. The name and logo struck Bryson Walsh like a physical blow. His face went from concerned to horrified as dawning recognition set in. Thank you, Desiree, Zora said, taking the portfolio. Please provide the officers with copies of my identification and corporate documentation. Then ensure all security footage is preserved and backed up to our servers. She turned to Preston. Mr. Reed, she said, her voice calm and precise as she extracted a final document. I am Zora Timberlake, CEO of Timberlake Financial Group. 3 weeks ago, my company acquired a controlling interest in this bank's parent corporation. She handed him the acquisition papers. In simple terms, Mr. Reed, I own this bank. The document trembled in Preston's hands. The woman he had dismissed, demeaned, and assaulted was not just a customer. She was his ultimate superior. His face drained of all color, a complete and brutal inversion of a power dynamic he had never thought to question. I'm so sorry, ma'am, he stammered. I didn't know. But Zora had already turned away. Bryson Walsh, his face now a mask of fawning desperation, rushed forward. Ms. Timberlake, had we known who you were, of course you would have received our premium service. This is all a regrettable misunderstanding. No, Mr. Walsh, Zora interrupted, her voice quiet but carrying the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. It was no misunderstanding at all. There has been no misunderstanding. None at all. Everything that has happened over these past 3 days is precisely what I came here to observe. I came to see how Monarch Financial treats customers it perceives to have no power, no authority. The treatment I received was not a mistake. It was policy. It was the practice this branch implements day after day against customers who look just like me. A wave of whispers swept through the lobby. Customers who had witnessed the casual cruelty now watched its stunning conclusion unfold. The faces of the staff went pale, a silent cascade of memories replaying in their minds, every dismissive glance, every curt response they had given the woman who now owned them. The security guards stood frozen, the realization dawning that they had nearly handcuffed the owner of their entire institution, all on the word of the manager who had just assaulted her. Desiree stepped forward. She gently took the acquisition document from Preston's limp hand and placed it back into Zora's portfolio. Ms. Timberlake, she said, her voice cutting through the tension, the executive team is assembled in the conference room. Legal has the emergency documentation ready for your signature, and HR is standing by. Preston's eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for an ally, a friendly face, anything. He found nothing. Colleagues who had shared coffee with him that morning now avoided his gaze, subtly shuffling away from the crater that was his career. Even Bryson Walsh, the branch manager who had cultivated and protected Preston's toxic behavior for years, now stood apart, his mind already spinning, calculating the precise angle of his betrayal. Officer Kimura, having conferred with her colleagues, approached Zora. Her tone was one of professional respect. Ms. Timberlake, do you wish to press formal charges for the assault? We have clear video evidence and a lobby full of witnesses. The question hung in the air, a new kind of silence falling over the crowd. Preston's professional future was destroyed, but criminal charges, that was a different kind of ruin, a permanent stain that would follow him long after he left this building. Every person seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what form justice would take. Zora considered the officer, then glanced at the broken man who was Preston Reed. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and measured. No, I won't press charges, but his employment here is terminated, effective immediately. This was never about one man, it's about changing the culture that created him. As Preston was escorted away to process his termination, the lobby remained in a state of stunned silence. They had just witnessed the beginning of a reckoning, an institutional rot exposed not in a boardroom, but in the full light of day. Zora turned to the silent crowd of staff and customers. Her voice carried easily through the hushed space. Monarch Financial will be closed for the remainder of the day while we implement necessary changes. To our customers, please know these changes are to ensure that everyone who walks through these doors receives the respect and service they deserve. To our staff, a mandatory meeting will begin in 30 minutes to outline new expectations and new structures of accountability. With that, she turned and walked toward the executive offices, her team falling in step behind her. Her posture revealed neither triumph nor anger, only the quiet, purposeful determination of a woman who had found exactly what she was looking for, and now had the power to fix it. As she disappeared from view, the customers began to file out, many already sharing the story on their phones, uploading videos that would soon be seen by millions. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the marble floor as the consequences of Zora's revelation unfolded. Preston Reed's exit was a spectacle of silent shame. The same guards who had nearly arrested Zora now flanked him as he carried a single cardboard box. His tie was loose, his face a sickly white. As he reached the glass doors, he paused, and a tear of pure regret traced a path down his cheek. The moment the doors closed behind him, a spontaneous wave of applause erupted from the remaining customers. It was not a celebration of one man's fall, but a recognition of a system finally being held to account. His departure was only the beginning. Vivian Mercer, the veteran loan officer who had perfected the art of discriminatory standards, was next. Her exit was quiet, her small box of belongings a testament to a long career that had produced little of personal value. Then came Bryson Walsh, the branch manager. He did not go quietly. Evidence gathered by Zora's team, security footage, emails, witness testimony, had systematically dismantled his claims of ignorance. He had not just allowed the rot, he had nurtured it. "You can't do this," his voice cracked, echoing in the cavernous room. "Do you have any idea who I am, the people I know?" He clutched his box of belongings like a shield. 26 years. I gave this bank 26 years of my life. What he failed to understand was that his long tenure was not a defense, but an indictment. 26 years of perpetuating bias, of teaching new generations to do the same. As the doors closed on his sputtering outrage, Zora addressed the remaining staff. "What you saw today was not about punishment," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It is about change. The individuals who were dismissed received documented evidence of their violations of policy, of ethics, and of the law. For those who choose to stay with Monarch Financial, know this: we will operate under a new standard. A standard of accountability, transparency, and absolute respect for every single person who walks through our doors." Her words settled over them, a moment of reckoning for every employee present. Outside, news vans were already arriving, drawn by the viral videos. Zora had ensured this reckoning would be public. Transparency was the first step toward transformation. As twilight fell, Zora stood alone in the silent lobby. The marble floors and wood-paneled walls remained, but their meaning had been fundamentally altered. She walked to the doors where, 30 years earlier, her grandmother had been turned away, denied a loan that could have changed their family's history. That discrimination hadn't vanished. It had just learned to hide behind policy and protocol. Exposing it here, in one branch, was not the end. It was the beginning. It was a model for change that would send ripples through an entire industry. 6 months later, Zora Timberlake stood in that same lobby. The transformation was breathtaking. The imposing teller counters were gone, replaced with open, collaborative spaces. The intimidating investment posters were replaced with displays highlighting community partnerships. And the people, both staff and customers, were a vibrant reflection of the city itself, a diversity that had emerged naturally once the artificial barriers were torn down. Following a comprehensive and public third-party audit, Zora had rebuilt Monarch from its foundations. The secretive client rating system was gone. Loan applications were now transparent and standardized. The insidious practice of using zip codes as a proxy for race had been abolished. Hiring practices were overhauled to value lived experience and community connection alongside banking credentials. Every employee underwent rigorous training on the history of financial discrimination and the mechanics of unconscious bias. The results defied cynical predictions. New accounts were up 34%, driven by minority communities who had long been ignored. Socially conscious corporations moved their substantial assets to Monarch, drawn by a demonstrated commitment to real change, not just empty diversity statements. As she walked through the bustling space, Zora saw the proof in 100 small interactions. She watched an elderly black woman, dressed in a simple but well-kept coat, receive the kind of detailed investment advice once reserved for the occupants of luxury cars. She saw a young Latino entrepreneur confidently discussing a business loan, unburdened by the mountain of extra paperwork that would have once been demanded of him. A quiet smile touched her lips. The change wasn't just visible, it was real.